Welcome to the RetailWire podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode here at the RetailWire podcast. We have another fun show for you today, but I'm joined in the studio today, not by one Brain Trust member, but also by my good friend Chase Benny, the CEO here at RetailWire. And he decided he wanted to jump in on an episode with me. So we're going to do that today. But before we do that, I just wanted to jump in and say we're very, very excited. I'm going to let this guy introduce himself. Yes, hint, hint, himself. I'm going to let him do that right now. Oh, yeah, you got that, huh? Okay,
Yeah.
There we go. But today, joining us on the RetailWire podcast, we have Mark Self. And you know what? Without further ado, I'm just going to bring him in here. Mark, how you doing, man?
Hey, Brian, I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, absolutely. Glad to have you with us. Tell the folks at home a little bit about who you are.
I'll try to give you the short version of the long story. I've had a long technology career with IBM, Motorola, NCR, leadership positions there. Started in the San Francisco Bay Area, studied English literature at UC Davis, which of course is a natural path to technology career. In between, I've run sales and marketing for a $150 million publicly traded company. I've been in 4 different pre-revenue startups. I'm leading 2 right now, pre-revenue startups. One is a tech spin-out from UNC Chapel Hill, and another one is actually an apparel spin-out, advanced material spin-out from NC State. So that's me in a short nutshell. And in between the seams there, education-wise, I got my master's from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Business when I was in Chicago, which was part of my IBM career arc, but kind of very, very wide and deep experience-wise in go-to-market, everything go-to-market, sales, marketing, business development, marketing strategy, business strategy, product market fit, all of that customer-facing stuff that is key to any business's success. So that's me in hopefully a very short outline.
And that's really cool. So you have definitely been around a while, and I know now you're at Vector Textiles, president, CEO of that. We've got, before I go too much further down this road, I'm going to say, Chase, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Dude, absolutely. This is your first episode with us. So, hopefully not your last, right?
No, yeah, I want to get more involved. This one in particular, just there's something about Mark's story that resonated with me. So I wanted to be part of it.
That's super cool, man. Well, thanks for jumping in here. And you heard the introduction there by Mark. Now am I reading this correctly? You're in Raleigh area, North Carolina area?
Yeah, I've lived here. It's actually a town called Cary, which is right next to Raleigh. It's kind of a suburban outpost of Raleigh, but we've been here since '94, Brian.
Okay. Chase, you want to go down and visit in Cary, North Carolina?
I've heard of the city, but the only place I've been in North Carolina is Lake Norman.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's a lovely state, and I grew up, as I mentioned earlier, in California, and spent some time, 5 years in Chicago, and 2 years in London, and 2 years in Atlanta. But I keep coming back to North Carolina, and wonderful place to live. I should be in the Chamber of Commerce because it's great here.
Mark Self for mayor. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, there you go. Move here. That's fun, maybe for the folks out there that aren't familiar with Raleigh and Cary. When I moved here, there was a lot of kind of incoming transfers from big corporate jobs, specifically IBM and Cisco and whatnot. And the realtor's name for Cary was collecting area for relocating Yankees. And that's where I live.
Nice.
In the containment area. We don't talk about the war of northern aggression anymore down here. So
Well, I know, man. Again, I'm super excited, and I actually, I wanted to go ahead and let Chase jump in here because he has he's been pecking me on the side here, going, "Hey, I need to be in on this," So I'm actually just really building this up much larger than it is right now. But it's super fun to kind of watch him go, "Where's Brian headed with this?" So. Um, Without further ado on that, I'm going to go ahead and let Chase jump in because Chase, you had some more questions for him, right? And I know we've had some offline conversations with Mark via email, which has really spurred even more of your excitement around kind of getting to know him. And so I'll just go ahead and let you take the lead on this and jump in to kind of get into the Meet the Brain Trust episode.
Well, a few months ago on one of our Brain Trust calls, I mentioned that, there is a new generation who wants to learn. And a lot of our Brain Trusts have experience that would be so valuable for someone starting out their career. And so Mark mentioned that he's mentoring high school students and has done projects with them. So that's where I want to jump in right away. Mark, tell us more about your experience mentoring students. You said you have projects at a private high school and at Northeastern University.
Yeah, so thanks, Chase. The whole start of this, I've been doing it for close to 8 years. And back when I started, I had kind of an idea that was not right with the school that I ended up developing a relationship. I thought that there might be an opportunity. I was seeing high school kids who knew how to code real effectively, right? And I had this probably kind of semi-evil idea that I could go out and hire high school graduates for software development jobs, pay them at a much lower rate. However, wouldn't be taking advantage of them. I'd be paying them a sum of money that was far exceeded anything that they would get right then, and save them the 4 years of college and gain young, somewhat inexperienced but talented coding capabilities and put them into my tech team at the time. So that was kind of my thesis, right? And I went out and pitched that. I started with the charter school that my three kids went to. And the idea was met with a little bit of interest. However, it kind of stopped for me personally because I was in a hurry. And I was informed that in order to do something, anything like that, mentoring, internships, work study program, anything, I'd have to go through all of these kind of government type hoops, like background checks and all of that kind of stuff. And it was going to take probably at least 6 or 7 months to get through the administrative part where I could just start to develop a relationship with the school. So I didn't like the time lag, and I went and pitched to a school here locally called Carey Academy, which is a private, and here's where they kind of veered in another path. That's a private college prep high school. So obviously you can't go in there pitching, hey, guess what? You all don't have to go to college. You can just get a job right now. And my conversations with the Carey Academy administrators turned into, let's try an internship. And then they had what they call a work experience program, which is a 2-week program for all rising seniors. So I changed my initial idea and kind of inserted myself into their program. And this has been going on. I probably have had about 64 rising seniors that I've given work to. And another one other thing is that Carey Academy is right next to SAS Institute, the big private software company. So the Carey Academy thing, a lot of those kids from an internship perspective matriculate into SAS. It's a beautiful campus. I mean, it's like Disneyland if you like corporate campuses. This like 5-star chef for lunches and whatnot. It's a lovely place to work. But I took that and I used it when you go and you present what your project is going to be. So I went in and I basically said to my first group of kids, I'm going to give you real work. And by real work, I mean that if you do a good job, I'm going to use your work in either investment presentations, or I'm going to use it with sales pitches or marketing. This isn't like a make work thing where I just have you tag along with a corporate executive and you eat lunch and you have fun and you get to work out at the SAS gym and whatnot. And I'm not being critical of the bigger business, but I had I had to kind of compete differently because I was leading a startup software company, and there wasn't a restaurant within 5 miles of where our office was. So I thought to myself, maybe one way to kind of compete for the interested kids who are interested in business would be to give them real work and really challenge them. And I did that with no expectation. And the first year, I guess I was fortunate enough. I had 5 kids, and 2 of them were just amazing. One, Alex Yang, is in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's like a lead developer at Salesforce. No, LinkedIn. And so he moved from North Carolina to California, and there were several other kids that made a big impression on me. And the key part that all of them told me was attractive to them was the giving them the real work part. And sometimes that worked perfectly, and other times, I had to kind of course correct. But I got excited about that first group of students, and then since then, I actually kind of look forward to late May when the program starts, and then invariably 1 or 2 of the kids want internships for the summer. And so this has been an 8-year journey, but really more of an 8-year relationship with different groups of high school kids. And I'm going to come back to the high school kids in a second. Somehow, when all of this was happening, I don't even know how they found me, because it's not like I promote this on LinkedIn or anything. I don't say loves to mentor young adults getting started in their career. There's no language like that in my bio. But Northeastern University called me. Northeastern has a work study program where college kids get course credit if they do a project for a business, any business. And they wanted to know if I would mind kind of putting together a couple of prospective projects for Northeastern kids. And I did. And the way that works is you put your project up on some kind of virtual board, and then the kids say, oh, that really sounds boring, or this sounds interesting. And then they basically sign up for the project. You get a professor who doesn't teach, but he or she is there to help the process, kind of get me acquainted with the students and whatnot. And I've been doing that with Northeastern. I've probably done about 9 different projects of various shapes and sizes with Northeastern. So roughly about the same amount of 8 years, eight plus projects with high school, and 8 to 9 projects with Northeastern juniors and seniors. And I'll riff off of that for a minute. The interesting thing to me, there's many interesting things, but one thing I notice about the Northeastern students is that all, to a man and a woman, they are very, very comfortable with just typing on their computer, which isn't a criticism,
Mm-hmm.
but they lack the social skills. And the Zoom, we've all been through we're here doing this now, and we weren't doing this so much 3-4 years ago, right? So we're all getting more comfortable with it. But what I noticed, to my surprise, was the high school kids, because they were here, they were in the office wherever I was or the team was. I felt like that was a much more enriching environment, and I felt like I got more out of kids who were 2, 3, 4 years younger than the college kids. I'll keep using Northeastern, but the whole thing is a different feeling. So Northeastern's great if I've got a pure research project, something that a student can do nothing but get on the computer and do research. They're very uncomfortable they seem to be. I shouldn't be so final. They seem to be very uncomfortable with human interaction and taking guidance or doing something like, hey, instead of like looking for that research on whatever websites you find, I want you to actually call some people and tell them what you're doing. And you might as well ask them to jump across the Golden Gate Bridge in one leap, because they just don't, they're not comfortable with that. And I find that kind of sad. And I suspect it's more than just Northeastern. So I just feel like what I'm seeing is when I've got kids here in person, kids who are 17, 16, some of them are 18 years old. First of all, they're going, let me repeat myself, they're going to a college preparatory high school that is very expensive, and you get your money's worth because these kids are driven, they're smart, they play off of each other. So I'm fortunate to have this wonderful institution right in my backyard here. I'm not sure that every single high school would give someone like me the same experience. So I'm kind of getting, the proverbial cream of the crop already, right? And I've noticed the difference between the two
really
groups.
Quick, just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say to ask on that, as you were kind of talking there, one thought that crossed my mind was kind of the initial was like, was it a knee-jerk reaction? But from what I'm understanding, you're not saying it's not necessarily a hostility thing of I don't want to interact. It's that there's maybe a lack of confidence or a lack of the social dynamic structuring, right? Based on kind of the last, what would we say, 3 years of kind of real world changes. So it's not necessarily that they just don't want to. It's the fact that they don't want to because they're not necessarily equipped in the best
Right.
way that they could be, is based on that, and also compared to someone who was physically socialized within the same actual space, right?
That's a much more elegant way, Brian, of putting it than the way I was describing. But it's not like they're allergic to it. It's that they don't seem to have
Yeah.
that kind of background. And I started out our conversation with talking about my original intent was kind of hire kids right out of high school, but it's also I think it's a proof point for what you should get out of a college education, which in addition to the classwork is all the socializing, right? And you take that away, you kind of learn how to be an adult if you have a perfect 4 years. But you take that away with virtual stuff, and it's been difficult, I think. And the high school kids, in contrast, didn't have to deal with that.
There's a really interesting kind of pattern I'm seeing, and a lot of the topics that we've been covering on RetailWire have to do with a convenience, self-checkout, things gone digital, virtual reality, like all these different ways that seem like, oh, this might be the future. Let's do augmented reality, and people can kind of they can just like click with their finger and buy something. Yeah. But we're missing this other human side where that may look good on paper and on a profit statement for the companies who are implementing these things. But then when you visit in person with say a high schooler or a college student, and you see they have been going, when they go to a grocery store, if they go, they might do delivery. They might get HelloFresh to their door and never do. But if they go, they can just do self-checkout. Right. And so anyone can live in this society now with very little human interaction if they just choose the self-checkout, the delivery. Any questions they have, they ask their phone, they ask ChatGPT, or they can find somebody on YouTube who will talk about this situation that they're going through. So we have access to all this stuff without needing to. And I just watched a short documentary about the retail store's design throughout history. And they showed images, and none of us were probably alive at this time, but when the retail store was more like you walk in and everything was behind the counter.
Yeah.
and you had to talk with the clerk and then pick out, almost like how they keep cigarettes behind the counter now. They kept all the product behind the counter, and you would shop personally with that one person. And then they would add it all up, and you get to the cash register, and then you get your stuff. And so society has gone from this, you have to talk to people, to now you don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to. But when we follow just the ease and comfort around every decision point and say, well, I'm uncomfortable talking to people, so I'm going to choose the self-checkout. Never being in with virtual classes, and there's so much leniency with just accommodating people. Some of it's justified, and other times we do need challenges.
I don't want to go all Luddite on the two of you. I think that there's a time and a place for the technology, and you have to integrate the technology in an effective way so that it provides value to the shopping experience, and blah, 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 blah. But I've found that I think that the key highlights or lowlights, depending on the group, but key highlights for me are that the kids, when they're driven like this and they've already got kind of the gray matter that's still being structured through whatever classes they're taking, they like to be challenged, and they love the fact that if they do a good job, I'm going to actually use the work. I'll give you a quick example. One of the companies that I'm associated with, Vector Textiles, the logo that I'm using for Vector Textiles, that was a logo that was built by a high school rising senior. And she had an interest in design, and I said, well, give me some. I was eager to move from kind of an old site with old graphics and all that, and to a new site. And I said, here's kind of the initial idea. Go off and make me something. And she came back not only with the logo, which I don't know if everybody likes it. I like it. I think it's professional looking. And she also did the brand guidelines relative to color. And this is from a 16-year-old. Right. And all I needed to do was give her that challenge and kind of try to tap into her mentioned interest in graphic design. And it's a no risk situation for me, because if I hate it, then okay, but I gave her some work, and I'm paying for it with my time, but I'm not writing a check for somebody that I hired or going out and hiring a marketing firm to do that. So I like that as an example of challenging kids, giving them work. And then I think the other point that I've seen over 8 years is that they are a lot more kids today are a lot more confident with things like just standing up and presenting. And when I try to think back, you do kind of like, well, what the hell was I like when I was 17? I would have never gotten up in front of a room of adults and said, well, let me tell you about the brand positioning of this. I wouldn't even know what the heck I was talking about. I mean, much less having the courage to just stand up and talk like that.
Yeah.
So kind of generationally.
Do you think that's because of social media's influence?
Maybe, Brian. I don't know. That's a good question, a good observation. I really don't know, because social media has been kind of the villain of the day right now, and it's keeping us all from having actual interactions. But at the same time, I could see some validity to that, because they're seeing other people so often give talks, like TED Talk.
Yeah.
I've got kids that mention I want to have a TED Talk. Like, whatever.
Exactly.
I like it, So I think that it's there's two sides of the coin there. Part of that is
It's almost a sense of like false confidence, not in a way that is like arrogance or anything. I don't think that at all. I think that social media has trained us how to present to a camera so well. It's taught us so much how to present to the internet and these random people that I don't know and I don't have any conversation with. But when we get into a room, say like with an actual TED Talk, if you were giving a speech to someone, I think the disconnect can potentially be where they don't know how to act when someone responds. And I think
Right.
that's a pitfall that I could see um, from people who aren't necessarily physically socialized in the same space, but are so well socialized on social media. They've been trained for this one-way monologue instead of a two-way dialogue. And so when you're presenting and suddenly you've been presenting to a camera for 2 years, and the camera doesn't ask questions, the camera doesn't interrupt you, the camera doesn't have these different things going on. You can silence or ignore a comment section if you'd like, but then whenever you get into an actual room and someone says, "Well, hey, can you expound more on this?" and they look at you like a deer in the headlights, you know?
Or you look out to the group and 5 out of 15 people are staring at their phones and you don't know what to do with that,
Exactly.
right? So,
And
yeah,
then that makes your confidence drop. That makes your ability to stay focused drop.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
then, that's where I think that there could be such a big potential risk there with, the training from social media is great in the sense that it can teach you to look at a camera, which is quote unquote looking someone in the eyes, but it's not the same as looking someone in the eyes. And
right.
so you're reading all these different facial cues, your different positions of your shoulders, your chest, your neck, your head, anything else like that. People are reading that in real time, but you can present really well to a camera. Like I can look straight into it, and I know I'm looking right at you if you're watching the video. But
Y-
whenever there's an actual human being and they look off to the side and they have this little weird like I don't know what to do right now, then you get thrown
Yeah,
off.
You're working in the tech sector. It's notoriously known for like being more about tech skills or STEM skills and not as much about social. It's not like you're working with theater students.
right.
And so that may be something there. But what do you see the role of really the soft skills in any sector, but especially for you? You're looking at this is a world where almost any job is going to need tech skills. Even if you just work at Target, you now have a device that you carry around, and that device is you're either taking, you're scanning things, you're reading spreadsheets, you're looking through databases. No matter how fancy the UI is or the user interface, you're still having to understand things in kind of a technology way. How do you see the role of these soft skills, and where do you see those being actually developed for people?
So I want the record to show that I did not ask Chase to ask me this question. But because I am a big, huge proponent of a humanities, a traditional liberal arts education. In part, I'm tooting my own proverbial horn because I studied English literature, and what the heck, how in the heck does that get you to a technology career, right? But here's my defense, and here's my observation. You can go to school. You could go to school like people in the 60s who were coders, they coded in something called Fortran, right? How many times so the language has changed, the technology advances. So we need STEM classes and we need people majoring in engineering and computer science. So I'm not dishing that at all. However, if you get a really strong liberal arts education, really strong based on the classes and your engagement with it, you're going to learn critical thinking. You're going to learn how to write, which Chat GPT is Chat GPT, but you still need to write and to articulate your positions on things. And you can't get that unless you've been writing papers or you analyze some poem or you're writing about history or whatever. That is really hard to replicate. Now here's the potential other side of this conversation is that soft skills, we all talk about soft skills. Soft skills are really difficult to put on your resume, right? What the heck do you say? Well, I really like people.
I'm a
It's
people person.
yeah, right. I'm a great leader. All that kind of nonsense that just sounds like gobbledygook, right? So it's really hard to sell that on paper. People only get a sense
Yep.
of that when they meet you or talk to you in person. But it's absolutely critical for the success of you in any kind of career. You mentioned theater students earlier, but eh, you can't get that if you just take an engineering classes. And the people who the skills that are going to be, in my opinion, harder to replicate are the soft skills. You can't read a book about emotional intelligence or whatever and just walk away thinking, yeah, I get it. It takes thousands of hours and days of interaction and falling on your face and embarrassing yourself or and you don't get that when you're learning computer science. So that's my, I don't know, 2 minute promotion for a traditional liberal arts education, which by the way is very much under fire right now because you've got very, very, very high tuition rates and people are understandably saying something to the effect of, "Hey, I'm not going to pay $250,000 for little Jimmy to go to blah 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 school and learn history. Where's that going to get him?" You know. So we're
Yeah.
there's a lot of things at play here. But for my money, somebody that knows critical thinking, knows how to position an idea, and knows how to take their opinions and take themselves out of the discussion and keep it to a business discussion and do that in a way that promotes the idea and not themselves, that's golden. You just can't learn enough of that.
And I think that's a really great point there. And, one of the things too, I think, you know, liberal arts education, I think, has a great place if it's doing something that's truly contributing back to society. I know that nowadays we have such a diverse, and I say that cautiously, we have
Yeah.
such a diverse offering of majors. I don't think I could have ever I graduated 2007 from college, and I don't think I could have gotten like a major in dragonfly dance studies or something
Yeah.
then, but I probably could now.
Yeah.
Lens cap analysis or something could be another great major in 2023, I think. So I think that, going back to your point, I think when liberal arts universities are doing their best to see what society needs and then addressing those issues through their programming, then by all means, I think it's a great program. I think we may have gotten a little hijacked at some point along the way, but that's a
Yeah.
whole different discussion. So
It is, and you're right, Brian. That's what I think I've seen over the last 8 years of working with different groups of kids. I haven't seen, there isn't an arc for me that says, wow, the kids nowadays are just so much smarter than the kids 8 years ago. However, I do
yeah,
feel like I'm seeing increasingly kids that are a little bit more confident in their abilities, maybe sometimes to a fault. But in general, the quality of the high school students, I just can't, I can't play that song long enough. It just amazes me that I can get good work out of a 17-year-old, with work that, by the way, I'd pay real money for with someone postgraduate out of college. And I'll add
yeah,
one other thing. I feel like I'm getting better at leading them.
That's a perspective that not a lot of people will mention, that it's could be as much about the student or the employee as it is the leader.
Sure.
And it sounds like you've spent time to understand them and their approach to be able to lead. This is, I think, relevant to since we are on a RetailWire podcast. I keep thinking about retailers, and there's a lot about labor. It's hard to keep people. There's a lot of churn, a lot of turnover, and often it seems like it is hard to staff the retail stores, and so there could be a lot of reasons.
There's a couple of things jump out to my mind. One is that very often you get kind of average, we'll just say average leadership at store level. And people are asked to do, no job is demeaning, by the way. Maybe that dates me personally, but you get these jobs that go do this and go do that, and it's very rudimentary and it's very repeatable. And what does that do when you've got a repeatable rudimentary task? Well, that leaves that task open for what? Drumroll, automation, right? You get a store environment like Lowe's or Home Depot come immediately to my mind. Those people actually have to know something, because when you're asking, most of the time you're asking for more than just tell me what aisle the window cleaner's on. They've got to give some guidance and interact with you in a way that's not open in other retail environments, like the old department stores, where department stores kind of a dead segment right now with all the right reasons. But when they were in their prime, you'd go into a department store and people would actually know something about the dress or the blouse or the suit or how to put an outfit together, or there was an interaction there that was exciting. And now, in our drive to take out costs, I think that retail, many merchants, many retailers have lost track of the fact that it's not just a cost when you have somebody on the store floor. It could be somebody that can make the shopping experience that much more fulfilling for a customer or a group of customers. And I don't see that. I shop, as we all do, I shop a lot, and I've been in retail technology for a big part of my career, and I just don't see it. I see people that are poorly trained, who aren't taught to look for people to help. They're just filling shelves, or they're just doing something that is easily automated. And I think it's the death knell for a lot of these positions. I mean, the self-checkout, which is going to continue to be seen in stores. The original business case for that was you're taking 4 lanes with 4 cashiers, and now you're going to have 4 self-checkouts with 1 person looking over them. So you just took 3 people out of the equation. That was the business case. So it was about labor savings, right?
I recently went to a shoe store. I have 2 contrasting experiences to share. One is I went to a shoe store and I was asking to try on the shoes. They brought out my size. I tried them on. And the person actually said, "You can get a better price on Amazon." And I said, "No, I think I looked it up on my phone and it was like $10 difference." I was like, "I think I'll buy it here." I had never seen that, where they almost tried to not sell me. To me, it shows there's something up with the leadership of that store. On the other hand, I went to a department store here in Arkansas called Dillard's, and it's a very old, it brought me back in time, because it had the jewelry section, and there were actually a lot of people shopping there. I was really surprised how many people were at this department store. Well, I was looking for a shirt for the next conference, and I was just really indecisive. There were so many brands and so many things. The guy who was in charge of the dress clothes area, he came over and looked at me. He looked at my neck, and he was like, looks around a couple tables, grabs a shirt and said, "This one's your size. This brand is really nice. There's this kind of there's a unique button on for the cuff." And I bought it without trying it on. I put it on when I got home, and it was the perfect fit, perfect size, and it fit my personality. That type of experience, I wish I could have that everywhere.
Yeah. And you don't.
So he was enthusiastic, but he also wasn't too involved. He just gave me the advice. He said, "I think this one will be good." And then he walked off. But he was around in case I had questions. But he just gave confidence and then gave me space. It was a great experience. there's a restaurant that gave me that same experience, and I asked the server, said, it seems like you know everything on this menu. And she said, yeah, the chef actually does once a month. We do a full, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours of training, and we're tested on if we know the menu. We actually have to go and like watch them cook it. That leveled up the experience at the restaurant to a point where we could ask about any item, and she was able to do the substitutions, and she knew exactly how they cooked it. It's hard to do that without spending that time and putting that money into the training. I mean, time is money. So if they're going, oh, we don't have time for it.
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't want to spend the money on it.
And the funny thing is that exact thing, it plays out so much whenever you're actually asking for that input. You're asking for someone's recommendation. You can always tell there's this look, there's kind of this feeling that they give you back if they don't know, but they've tasted 2 or 3 items on the menu and they're like, oh, my favorite is this. Oh, that's the best. And then you hear them walk over to that table and they say, oh, that's one of my favorites. That's the best. And then they walk over to that table and they go, oh, that's my favorite. That's the best. No, you're just full of crap. What you need to do is exactly this immersive experience. And the more your staff is trained, they can say, look, well, do you like coffee? Do you like coffee flavored? Well, then you'll probably love the coffee rubbed tri-tip. Do you like this smoky, savory kind of thing? Then you'll want to try this. If you want this, you need this. And so then they can help build a custom experience for the person. Exactly what they did with the shirt in your example, Chase, is they're looking at you. It seems like maybe was a little, streamlined as far as that goes, but he was so on point with assessing, okay, here's the look that you came in with, like what you're wearing, the way your hair, the way your face, the way your everything is, and then made an assessment. And then if he knew that if he made a wrong assessment of you, you would probably let him know. But otherwise, hey, here's what I would recommend. And he was able to jump in, offer a custom solution for you. And you said, that's it. That's the one. And so I think that's where there's so much opportunity, not only there, but I mean, to Mark's, to tie it back to Mark here with learning these mentoring opportunities and everything. Having that personal interaction with people to usher them up into that next level of service of taking care of people. We say around here we're rehumanizing retail here at RetailWire, and that's exactly the point, because at the end of the day, it's still a person-to-person interaction, even if you do automate some tasks, right? But in the end, it's all still person-to-person.
That's exactly right. I think all these examples, they're institutional questions. They're not just people questions. And if you have an institution like a restaurant or like a department store that believes in the value of the interaction, then that's going to be a different shopping experience than one that is just looking to take out costs.
Yes, absolutely. I had the exact same experience in my own upbringing. I used to work at Sonic, and there was my manager there. We were the best, sounds silly now as an adult, but we were the best Sonic within like a 250-mile radius. And the reason was because of the way that our manager ran the shop. You have a Sonic that has its standards across the board everywhere, but he took his standards. And so, shout out to Jody, because he took every single one of us under his wing, and he could make sure that we were taught social skills. He made sure that we were taught, when you go out of this building, you're taking a small red tray with you. I don't care if you're delivering a ketchup packet or if you're running to your car to grab your visor or anything else. You take a red tray with you, and you do not re-enter this building unless you've picked up a piece of trash off our lot. If you have a hard time finding a piece of trash, keep walking. I promise you'll find one, because someone has littered. If you can't find some trash to pick up, you can straighten something up outside. There's always something to be done. And so when you train your brain to re-look for those opportunities, then that's where those customer service interactions become a part of, like you're saying, the institution, right? It's part of the greater experience as that brand. And so people knew that they could come to the Fort Scott Sonic and have a totally different experience than other Sonics in the area because of the brand we personally had created there. And I think that's where, I'm just going to call it out. Macy's and everybody is kind of struggling right now. They've kind of let their brand get so diluted, and I don't mean their actual MACY''S. I mean the people who work there, the heart and soul of everyone, and the customer interactions that they have gone completely away from caring for people. And so, I think that's where, Mark, I'm just super excited to see that you have such a great passion for high school and college age kids to really bring them up in such a way that is really ushering them into that next level of customer service. So that's fantastic.
No, I've learned probably as much from the various kids as they've learned from me, and I don't try to be like you got to do it this way, but I've taken away a lot from it as well, Brian. So I appreciate you noticing.
Chase, do you have any kind of final thoughts on this one? I know we're kind of wrapping up right now, so any parting questions for you?
We covered so much. This has been great, Mark. I love hearing your experience. We didn't even get into all of your life, but that I think speaks a lot about your character, that you are looking to empower others, and that's your mission right now.
I'm going to go off camera and cry on that point, Chase. But no, I listen, guys. It's been a great. I've had a great time talking to both of you, and it's something that I do feel very strongly about. And it started out, by the way, as a strictly kind of capitalistic endeavor. I could exploit I could exploit a hole in the system and give them something, they could give me something, but it's evolved into something much bigger. It really has. So, yeah. And like I said earlier in the show, I'm already looking forward to next May and what kind of kids am I going to get them.
So if people want to connect with you more outside of here, I would imagine, is LinkedIn probably the best way to start with that? Or is there another avenue they can use to reach you? What's the best way to follow up with you, Mark?
The easiest way would be LinkedIn. And I'm really good at, if someone tries to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, I'm good at that. I'm also good at ignoring the people who are obviously trying to sell me something that I don't want, whatnot. But I do look at LinkedIn, and I use LinkedIn Mail a lot. Also, I'm really not on Twitter or anything. I mean, I've got a Twitter handle. It's mselflead, but I don't know. LinkedIn is the best way for this audience. Just get to me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, if you want a phone conversation, set that up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to get on a conversation and hopefully help out a little bit.
Be sure and include a note of how you heard about him.
Because RetailWire.
One thing that drives me bonkers is when people reach out and they're like, looking forward to connecting. And I don't know this person. I don't know anything about them. We might have one or two mutual connections, but be sure if you do reach out to them, let them know you heard about them here on the RetailWire podcast and that you'd like to connect based on something you heard here, because that'll kind of help warm that up a little bit for you.
I appreciate that very much, Brian. I like the ones that come on like, I know you have a really impressive background. You're a very impressive person. I want to talk to you. And you're like, come on, really? Sure, whatever. Yeah. I mean, to bring this back to a kind of a very small positive, authenticity. If it's authentic, then it's going to work in most cases.
Exactly.
Yeah, Mark, I have a feeling there might be some people who listen to this and say they'd like to do something like this mentorship in their own industry.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Thanks again.
We'll have you on again here soon, Mark. We've got a lot of great opportunities coming up.
I'll look forward to that. And you two have a great afternoon. And thanks again for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And thanks again to everyone who is listening here. We really appreciate you being on the podcast and checking us out here. If you haven't already, be sure and hit that subscribe button, because you want to make sure and not miss another single episode here on the RetailWire podcast. We've got more Meet the Brain Trust coming up. We have some really cool conversations coming up with other industry professionals. So there's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of information, and you're not going to want to miss it. So we will see you next time for another great episode here on the RetailWire podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the RetailWire podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a comment for a chance to hear it read on the next show. See you next time here on the Retail Wire podcast.